My best friend and the guy I was dating started a relationship behind my back for months. They both swore it wasn't true. They both blocked me on the same day. What I discovered after that block told me everything. There are betrayals that come in a package that are not one person failing you, but two people who organize to fail you at the same time, and who in that process turn something that would already have been difficult into something of a particular complexity that takes longer than normal to process. Not because the betrayal is greater in abstract terms, but because the two people who failed you needed each other to do it. And that means that while you were trusting both of them separately, the two of them together were building something behind your back that required you to know nothing for it to work. That has a name. It is not just infidelity. It is not just friendship betrayal. It is both things at the same time, sustained for months, with the coordination of two people who chose their story over yours. My name is Sophia. I'm 27 years old. I am an audiovisual communications professional, and until 8 months ago, I had two people in my life who occupied completely different but equally important places. The first was Mateo. He was 29 years old. We had been dating for 5 months in a non-exclusive way, but with the intensity and frequency of something that was becoming more serious. He was a sound designer. We had tastes in common that made time together easy. Something was being built, or so I believed. The second was Nicholas. He was 28 years old. He was my best friend since university. For years of friendship that had survived different cities, relationships for both of us, job changes, the things that generally take away friendships that are not solid enough. Ours was solid, or so I also believed. The signs existed. I reconstructed them afterward, with the perspective of someone who already knows what they were looking at and who can see in retrospect what at the time there was no reason to see that way. Nicholas and Mateo had met at a gathering I had organized 4 months after I started dating Mateo. It had been a normal night. They had talked. It had seemed fine to me that they got along well. In the weeks that followed, Mateo had mentioned Nicholas a couple of times in conversations. Nicholas had mentioned Mateo similarly. I had interpreted it as them having hit it off, not as what it was. What came first was a shift in energy. Not in one, in both. Mateo started canceling plans more frequently than usual, always with reasons that made individual sense: work, tiredness, commitment he had forgotten to mention. But the frequency of the cancellations increased in a way that in retrospect has a clear pattern, and that at the time I attributed to perhaps things between us cooling down naturally. Nicholas at the same time became slightly more elusive. He responded to messages with less immediacy than before. When we talked, there were moments where I sensed he was somewhere else in the conversation. Two people simultaneously less present, who had, though I did not know it, a shared reason for being so. The first time I asked directly was 9 months ago. I asked Nicholas if everything was okay between us. I told him I sensed something different. He told me he was going through a complicated period at work and that it had him with less social energy. That was nothing to do with me. I believed him. He was my best friend of 4 years. Of course I believed him. I asked Mateo a week later if he felt something had changed between us. He told me no, that he was present, that maybe I was reading too much into the cancellations that had been circumstantial. I believed him too. I had been dating him for 5 months. That was not enough time to distrust a reasonable explanation from someone who had given me no prior reasons to doubt. What made it visible was a photo. An Instagram story posted by someone I followed peripherally, an acquaintance from a gathering, who tagged several people in a photo from an event I had not been invited to. In the photo were Mateo and Nicholas, together, at a live music event neither of them had mentioned to me. They would not necessarily have had to mention it. Two people who know each other can make plans on their own without that being automatically significant. But something in the photo, the way they were standing, the proximity, a detail of body language that I who knew both of them recognized as something that was not just two people who get along well at an event. I did not act immediately on the photo. I saved it, and I started paying attention in a different way from how I had been paying attention. What I found in the following 2 weeks when I paid that different attention was a series of pieces that individually still had alternative explanations, but that together formed something that no longer did. Mateo and Nicholas had made plans at least 4 times in the period where Mateo had told me he had canceled plans with me because of work or tiredness. I found out through posts from third parties, through tags on social media, through the kind of scattered evidence that exists on the social media of people who are not actively coordinating to hide themselves, but who are also not being careful. 4 times. In the same period where he had canceled on me 4 times. I confronted them separately. First, Nicholas, because he was my best friend, and because there was a part of me that still hoped for an explanation that would change what I was seeing. I sent him a direct message. I told him I had seen that he had made plans with Mateo several times, that I wanted to understand what was happening. The response took 3 hours. When it arrived, it was shorter than I expected. He told me Mateo and he had become friends, that he did not think he had to ask my permission to have friends, that he did not understand the problem. I did not respond immediately. I wrote to Mateo. I told him the same thing, that I had noticed he had made plans with Nicholas several times in the period where he had canceled on me, that I wanted to talk. Mateo responded in 20 minutes. He told me yes, that they had made plans a couple of times, that it was not a secret, that he simply had not given it enough relevance to mention it, that if I wanted we could talk, but that there was nothing to talk about. There was something in the coordination of those two responses, the way both of them minimized, the way both of them used almost the same angle, that it was normal friendship, that there was nothing, that I was creating a problem. That coordination in itself was information. I told both of them in separate messages the same thing, that if there was nothing, there was no reason for the discomfort, that if they were friends, I was fine with that, that the only thing I was asking for was honesty about what was happening between them, because something in what I was seeing did not add up with a narrative of casual friendship. Nicholas told me I was being paranoid. Mateo told me he did not know where I was getting these ideas. Two people telling me that what I was seeing was not what it was. That was also information. The block came 3 days later. A Tuesday morning, I noticed that the messages to Mateo did not have the double deliver check mark. I went to his profile. It did not appear. I searched his name. It did not appear. He had blocked me. I went to Nicholas's profile. The same. Both of them. The same day. Probably coordinated. I sat looking at the screen with the specific calm of someone who has just received confirmation of something they already knew but needed to see explicitly in order to stop calling it doubt and start calling it certainty. I did not try to contact them through other means. Not because I did not have ways, but because the coordinated block was the most complete answer they could have given me. It said yes. It said, we chose this. It said, we prefer to disappear from your life than to have an honest conversation. That was everything I needed to know. What I did in the following days was something I had not planned, but that turned out to be exactly right for me. I wrote everything down, not to publish it, not to send it to anyone, but because I work in communications, and because when I cannot process something verbally, I process it in writing, and because there were too many things moving in my head that needed a place to be still. I wrote the complete chronology, the signs I had ignored, the conversations where they had told me there was nothing, the block. And when I saw it written down, ordered, with dates and details, something happened that I did not expect. It stopped feeling like something that had happened to me. It started feeling like something they had chosen to do. That distinction seems small. It is not. There are mutual people who eventually told me things. Not because I had gone looking for them, but because in shared social circles information moves, and there are people who, when they know someone was treated a certain way, feel that person has the right to know it. What they told me confirmed what I already knew and added chronology. Mateo and Nicholas had started making plans regularly from the second month after meeting. By the third month, there was something that people in their circle who had seen it described as clearly romantic. By the fourth month, when I was still asking them both if everything was okay, and they were both telling me yes, they had already been in something for a while that they had actively decided not to tell me. For months of active lies, coordinated. What cost me the most was not the acute pain of the discovery. That pain is intense, but has edges. It has a moment where it begins, and though it takes time, it has an arc that eventually leads somewhere else. What cost me the most was the review. For years of friendship with Nicholasine, with the question of when he had stopped being my friend and started being someone who managed his relationship with me according to what suited him in each moment. I did not have an exact answer, but knowing the question existed changed the way I remembered things I used to remember differently. That is a specific loss that has no precise name, but that anyone who has been through something similar recognizes. 8 months have passed. I have not had contact with either of them again. I found out a month ago through a mutual person who told me with the delicacy of someone who does not know if it is a good idea to say it, but decides it is, that Mateo and Nicholas are still together. I received that information. I processed it, and I discovered that what I felt was not what I would have expected to feel. It was not renewed anger. It was not fresh pain. It was something closer to confirmation that the decision they made had real weight for them, that it had not been a slip or a confusion, that it was something they chose with enough conviction to keep choosing it. That does not make it less painful in retrospect, but it gives it a coherence that in a certain sense is more manageable than the alternative of everything having been without significance. What I want you to take from this story has 3 parts because this situation has them. The first, when 2 people in your life start behaving differently at the same time and the explanations each of them gives you sound coordinated in their structure, even if they are different in their content, that coordination is information. You do not have to do anything with that information immediately, but do not ignore it. The second, the block is a response to an honest question is a response. It says, we chose not to have this conversation. It says, the cost of honesty with you is greater than the cost of losing you. That hurts, but it is more real information than any conversation they would have had if they had decided to have it from discomfort and guilt. The third, 4 years of real friendship are not invalidated because the ending was like this. This one took me longer to learn, but it is true. What Nicholas and I had for 4 years had real value in those 4 years. The ending does not rewrite everything before it, even though it does change the way you remember it. Learning to hold both things at the same time, that it was real and that it ended this way, is part of the work. Not the easiest part, but part of the work. If this story touched you, comment. Would you have tried to contact them through other means, or would you have let the block be the final answer? Like if you believe a coordinated block says more than any conversation. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who is processing a double betrayal. Reflection to take with you. When someone chooses to block you rather than have a difficult conversation, that choice says something about how they value your peace of mind against their own comfort. You do not always need the conversation to have the answer. Sometimes the way someone leaves your life is the most complete answer they could have given you.